When Isabella from Prior Attire announced on February 4th of 2019 that she was organizing a romantic soiree in October, and that there was an option to go side saddle riding, my heart skipped a beat. Riding side saddle in costume has been a childhood dream of mine, and it so happened that I had been eyeballing some riding habits of this particular period on Pinterest prior to this, which, if you even know me a little bit, should not come as a surprise. There was one habit in particular that tickled my fancy, and in the famous words of Miss Bernadette Banner, I am complete trash for anything navy blue and or uniform. This is a painting of Sophie Dawes, also known as the Baronne de Feuchères. It so happened that I had enough blue wool fabric in my stash that I could use for this habit. I'm using the pattern from my velvet coat as a basis, with some minor adjustments like lowering the neckline and move the shoulder seams more to the back. Due to the length of the video and to be able to show you a more in-depth look on the construction of this costume, I've split this project into two parts. In today's video, I'll be covering the collar, sleeves, belt and skirt. But let's begin by finishing the interlining. In the meantime, I have made the line interlining, and I just want to show you. This is my center back. And as you can see, I have basted down mostly of the center back, and then I curved line stitched like this, and then I've pressed it open to one side, like so. And then once the garment is complete, I'm going to remove my basting stitch, and then I have extra moving space on the back because it is a tight-fitted jacket. So when you pull your arms forth, you have space on your back. But this is just to keep things in place and to have things still lined up properly. So I've done that, and I've done the front pieces. If you can see, it's really hard to see the blue and the black, and then it's basically the same as the front piece. So this is the one that's going to be stitched like that. So let's do that one. And then the other one, I think I'm just going to stitch these together like so, and put a bias tape on it, and then have way less bulk than when doing it like this, but this one has to be so. I want to show you how I finished the side seams. I stitched this side of the seam with an invisible flannel stitch, and then I did the same with the hansel. So I did not took the hansel inside the seam. So I took the basting out here so I could do the side seam, stitch it up, and then baste it down so it's nice and flat now. And I did the same with the shoulder seams, as you can see. So that's all hold in place. here's my finished collar. As you can see, it is standing up on its own. It's curved and manipulated by all the piqué stitches. So right now I'm going to trim my excess off because it will be zigzag on the coat. There we are. So, covering up the collar, I had to do a little bit of figuring out because the last time I did use this method, my collar was straight and now it's on a curve. So I had to do a little tests. But so I marked the line of my collar. She got a little bit already stretched, but that's fine. And then I added 1.5 centimeters. I marked 1.5 centimeters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over. But I'm going to turn it over like so. Mark my center front, or center back I should say. And then the corners. And as you can see, I have quite some fabric that I have to work in. But luckily this fabric lends itself for that, apparently. As you can see, it's already curved. So we're going to use a dense zigzag stitch to cover up the raw edge and to stitch it onto the collar. But then, as you can see, it falls nicely over the collar. So next is I'm going to roll back my fabric to where my zigzag, so my zigzag goes to here, so I roll it back to there, and then I mark it here. And then you basically go and feel. With the velvet's a little bit hard to feel, but you can like put your nail. So I've got a few things. What I did was sew the shoulder seams of my interlining and finish off this edge as well. Then I marked my 1 centimeter allowance of my interlining, and I already did this side, as you can see. So I'm going to snip in the curves here, and I'm gonna do the same and you line it up right where the zigzag stitch starts. And then you're going to stitch these together with a running stitch. So I've stitched my interlining, as you can see, and then I've cut my collar with 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'm going to turn it right, and then I'm going to start at the center back, pull my collar up, and then I'm going to base down the centimeter or 1.5 centimeters above my neckline. And by holding up my collar, I'll make sure that I have enough fabric to make that turn, if that makes sense. If I would have done it flat, the under and the upper collar would be the same size, and then when you turn it, it will do this instead of that, because that's what I want. So that's why I'm already turning it, to give it that extra room. Okay, so I've done the other side. As you can see, I have some extra fabric over, but once I turn that collar, it gets smooth. So now I'm going to turn in the velvet until it lines up with your interlining. And you're gonna do that for both sides, and then you're going to do the same stitch as what you've done here all the way, and then as last we'll finish off the corners. So the color is stitched on. Now we're gonna go to the corners here. So I made a little template from my pattern to see how I should cut it. So because the collar stands open, you see a little bit of the wool, the felt, so I want to cover that, and I want that to be covered. So I made a little paper pattern, and then this one folds in as well, like so. So I'm going to cut that out. time for the sleeves, and I was looking at the painting, and I wasn't sure if she had like this little insert cap, but at closer inspection I think it was cartridge pleats. So I prepared my fabric. I have marked to where the pleats will go, and then the rest will be just gathered into the armhole. And I've stitched a large, I don't know if you can see it, a large basting by machine on 2 centimeter seam allowance, and then I ironed it inwards to work in a little bit of the excess fabric. Next thing is stitch the seam shut and then make the cuffs, and then attach the cuffs on the bottom, and then insert the lining, and then we can put this baby in the jacket. So I'm making the cuff for my sleeves, and I'm doing it the same way I'm doing the belt. So I've interfaced a piece of cotton, and I have zigzagged the velvet to it. The only thing different I'm gonna do now is that I'm not going to turn this over, but I'm just going to overlock it on this side, and then that's where the sleeve attached to. But first I'm going to stitch this closed so it's already circular, and then I can flip the velvet over. There you have it, stitched. And I pressed this side open because I do not want to touch the velvet, because you will crush the hair. And then just pull the fabric with your fingers up to find its place. And then, because this is such a small opening, I'm going to baste it down and then overlock it, because if I put pins in it, my space to move is even more limited. So that's that one finished. I've made markings on every quarter of the cuff, and I did the same with the seam of my sleeve. So now I'm going to line that up, and I'm not going to match the seam of my sleeve with the seam of my cuff, because my seam of my sleeve is here, but I want my seam of the cuff, I want to be there. So what I'm going to do, this is my right cuff, so that goes there. So on this side should be the side seam. So there, it's just a small bit. And that's usually how I secure temporarily my gather stitches. So I have the width I need, but I can move around my pleats. So that one's done. And here I have my sleeve lining, and as you can see, it is with the right side out. That's because I'm going to put it inside my sleeve. at your markings again, but make sure your sleeve seams are lined up, because otherwise you'll get a twisted sleeve. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little bit too tight. I did it on purpose because now I can stretch it. And now it's the exact size of the cuff. So I've prepared the jacket for the sleeve setting. As you can see, I have cleaned up my armholes a little bit and basted down the lining and the outer fabric. And I did the hem. As you can see, this one's stitched on. And then I'm going to leave the interlining for open for a while, just in case. So yeah. First sleeve, this is, I put a letter in it, this is the right one. But it goes into the right armhole, obviously. Now, we're not gonna bother with the lining of the sleeve right now, so you can tuck that away. So I've sewn in half of the sleeve, and then I pulled my cartridge pleats, as you can see, and I lined them up where my seam allowance is, and I'm just going to start stitching them down by hand. And then it should look time for the belt. This is the same cotton I used for the interlining, but I've stiffened it with interfacing, iron-on interfacing, so it is really stiff right now, which I want for the belt. I've marked all my lines for the embellishment that goes on, because I can do it more accurate on the cotton than I can do on the velvet. So I'm planning to do like machine basting stitches to mark all my lines. I hope. I have to try it out. I've prepared the velvet. I've finished the edges with the overlock, because I want this to be as thin as possible with all the embellishments that's going on, and velvet is of course quite thick and has to go through the buckle. So what I'm gonna do is, on one side I'm going to zigzag this on, and when that one's zigzagged, turn it over like so, and then turn the other side up, and I'm probably going to hand stitch one side so it's invisible, but that way I think this will be the flattest way, and then everything will be sewn in place once all the embellishments go on top. So let's zigzag this on first. So I've just stitched my embellishments, and it used to look like this. So I drew a little template, And from that I made a little another template. Basically what I did was fold the fabric. Let me see where I started. Put it at the fold, the straight edge, and then I knew at what angle I could draw a line and I could stitch, and then in the next one is the other side. I could turn it over, draw a line, stitch, next, turn it over, draw a line, stitch, etc, etc. And it turns out like that. When I got to pleating the waist, I came to the conclusion that trying to pleat 4 meters of wool into a 73 centimeter waistband was just not gonna happen. Thus, Plan B was born. To keep the volume at the hem but reduce the volume at the waist, I decided on gored skirt panels. This was the moment where I was so exhausted that I just couldn't anymore, and just stopped filming the progress of the skirt.